We are live. Anybody with us? All right. Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. Good to have you. I got an announcement to make. We got Revival Conference coming up August 23rd, 24th. Sioux Falls, South Dakota at St. Michael's Church. What is Revival? Revival is a conference that Jamie and I put together to help all Christians experience the power and love of God. I got to turn my phone off here. Nothing worse than listening to yourself. Amen. Anyway, we've had 2 revival conferences in the past. This is number 3. Last year at the revival conference, we had 6 physical miracles that happened. My sister-in-law is one of them. She had pain in her hip for I don't know how many years, 3, 4 years, 2, 3 years, and the pain vanished. How is that? Well, it's the power of the Holy Spirit. That's how it was. And so very fun. Some praise and worship, some praying. I give a few talks on the Holy Spirit, the missing person of the Trinity. So that's August. I wanted to say April. August 23rd, 24th, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, St. Michael's. Tonight, the Twilight Zone. Do you guys remember that show, the Twilight Zone? I never really watched it. I think it was on in the 70s and 80s. I might be way off on that. And yeah, it was out there. You know, they had some topics that it was so far out there, Jerry, that you can't even imagine it could be real. And not saying that any of that is real. But at some point, you know, some of us have what I call a Neo moment. Let me repeat that. A Neo moment. Now, I'm referring to the movie The Matrix, right? The movie series The Matrix. And if you haven't seen them, you should see them. Excellent movies. I had a Neo moment when I was a sophomore in high school. And I was in study hall. And I remember thinking, something's wrong with the world. Something's seriously wrong with the world. And I don't know, I must have paused for 30 seconds. And then I just kind of went on my own way, you know? So a few years later, my girlfriend at the time was talking about how there seems to be these apparitions when people from heaven are appearing on earth over there in Europe somewhere. And I thought, my gosh, she's crazy. There's no way. Now, I grew up Catholic. I really liked going to Mass most of the time, most of the time. And I'm grateful that my mom made us go, even though I didn't want to be there. Some of those mornings, drinking too much alcohol. Anyway, I really enjoyed going to Mass. I kind of liked it. And when I was 17 years old, I went to basic training. And during basic training, you know, they strip you down. Now, you're probably wondering, where's this all going? I like going to Mass. I liked it. I'm saying that because I thought that was the climax, right? The apex of what it means to be Christian. Go to Mass on Sunday. Although it's the minimum. Something happened in the summer of 1988. God started speaking to me. And it was the wildest thing. Now, did I hear voices? You know, were voices coming in? No, I didn't hear any voices. But these thoughts kept coming into my head. And these thoughts were about God's existence. Is God real or not? And so through basic training, can you want God to be real, right? If anyone's been through basic training of any sort, you want a God to be real. And my favorite part of basic training was Sunday mornings. We got to go to Mass and be in the air conditioned for an hour. It was wonderful. No yelling. But God started to speak to me through thoughts, no voices. Would be nice one day to hear a voice, but probably in heaven. These thoughts came into my head. And I slowly began waking up. Waking up from what? Well, the world had me asleep. I was, in a way, unconscious. I was living in my own bubble. And I just thought, this is how life is. You just do these things. You go to high school, you're in sports, and you party, and you do these things, you know. And you go to college, and you get a job, and you get married, and you have kids, and then you die. And that's about it. But I did actually wake up. And there was a real clear time in 1990 after I gave my life to the person of Christ, because that's what everyone should do, I think, right? Why wouldn't you? I mean, what else is there, really? That God touched me in a way that was, how should I say this? Unexpected. And then I really woke up to what's going on around me. And over the past several years, there has been this waking up process. And I think there's different levels of waking up, to be honest with you. And by the time you get to heaven, you're fully awake. I mean, when you are looking at Christ face to face, and everyone will, every knee shall bend, right? Everyone shall bow to the King of Kings. You'll be fully woke at that point. Not woke in the modern sense of woke is crazy in the world, but fully woke. I got snapped out. God plucked me out at 19 years old. And he's not done with me. These last several years have been very, very strange. Do I hear an amen out there? Right? Very, very strange. And many of us went through rabbit holes of what's really happening and what could be happening. And I don't know about all that stuff. You can't really prove it. It's like this huge puzzle, and you get these tiny pieces, and they fit now and then. And you start figuring out that what the image is, and then all of a sudden you get a few more pieces, and that image is not what you thought it was at all. It's a different image. And after a while, you say, at least I have said, I'm never gonna figure out this image, but I still love the puzzle. It's a waking up period. God has been showing us what's been going on all along. I like Jordan Peterson. I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, but I'm not one of those Jordan Peterson fans where I watch every video, but I've watched a few of his, and I think he's great. He said, and I won't quote him, I'll paraphrase him. He said, what we are seeing in the world right now is a spiritual battle. We're in a spiritual battle, but it's playing out through politics. Boy, that made the most sense to me. That's exactly right. I think he's right on the mark. The drama's right before us. There's, if you will, some people say there's a movie happening right before us. And I think that's accurate. And I thought about that statement. I'm like, boy, that is, he's right on the mark. And then I bumped into this video. Let's see if I can pull this up here. I bumped into this video. I'm going to try to play it. It's 16 minutes long. By the way, it's in my show notes. Y'all should go watch the video. It's only about 16 minutes long. Sophia Stewart is interviewed, and she is the writer of the Terminator and the Matrix. And I want you to listen to what she has to say. This is about 3 minutes. I just cut a few pieces out, but go and watch the rest of the video if you've got time. So this is kind of what we're getting into tonight. I think she will explain it pretty well.
The Terminator is the prequels to the beginning of the Matrix. Sarah Connor is actually Neo's mother. So JC, John Connor's Jesus Christ, grows up to be Neo, one and the same in the Matrix. The Matrix is in the future. The Terminator is the past. It's time travel, past, present, and future time travel. It's the second coming of the Christ, the evolutions of consciousness, man versus the machine. So the machines, the Terminator machines, hear that a child is going to be born that's going to terminate them in the future when they oppress man. Because, see, it's a man versus the machine. It's God's children versus man's children, which was technology.
So man versus nature.
Exactly. So the Terminator has the time travel to the past because they know it's Sarah Connor. And they have to kill her, terminate her, so she won't have the baby. And Kyle Reese, he comes from the future to protect her, and he inadvertently gets her pregnant. And he has to go back to the future. And so it's the Immaculate Conception, because now she's pregnant and she fell in love with a man, but did it really happen? Did he exist? And then this child, when you see the three Terminators, the boy, and then the man child, subconsciously, he doesn't know why the Terminator is trying to kill him until he's hidden out in the city, in the Matrix, the future. When he reaches 30 years of age, the rebellion, Reloaded, revolution starts. And the rebels come and they find him because they've been watching him all along. That's what the Guardians and the Sentinels are all about. And so they wake him up to his purpose. They take him to Morpheus to train him to fight the machines. They take him to the Oracle because of the prophecy.
Do you consider yourself politically neutral?
I consider myself totally neutral. All I'm worried about is for the people. Because if the government doesn't protect my copyrights, he doesn't protect yours.
But the government is afraid of you. I would be afraid of you.
Well, there's no need to be afraid of me because I only stand for principles.
But what you know and the knowledge you share and what you have insights to can be very dangerous to some people.
Yes, but my job is to come here and waken people. That's what the Matrix is about, to wake you up from the Matrix, to get you out of the illusions and the lies and the ignorance. So it's not dangerous for me because that's my job. That's what I came here to do. That's why I wrote The Matrix and Terminator, to wake people up so they can move on to greater, better things.
Yeah, but a lot of these movie houses and these studios and the Facebooks of the world don't want people to know what happens to them every day when they share the information.
But that's destroying their free will, and God doesn't want that.
But people want to be ignorant. They don't want to know that they're being exploited. It requires too much responsibility when they find out.
Well, that's what the blue pill and the red pill is about. The red pill is about the blood of the living beings. The black and the blue ink is the machines. But this is the humans' world. We are the winners. They are the losers. So people need to exert their free will regardless of what anybody wants.
If you don't remember anything else about the broadcast today, is this: you're not as free as you think you are. You're in bondage in more ways than you imagine, and it's a different kind of slavery.
Yeah, it's very interesting. A different kind of slavery. So Glenn, what are you saying? Are we in the Matrix like the movie The Matrix? I don't think so. But I do think there is something about we're sleeping. We're not quite awake. And I wasn't. Again, I know it's not about me, but I've talked to hundreds, thousands of people. And similar story. They woke up to the person of Christ and he's alive, right? Now, in our Catholic faith and our Christian faith, we know he's alive. But that knowledge is really a head knowledge, right? I'm talking about a head and a heart knowledge. And I think many of you are still in your head. Now, I don't know who's listening. Right now, there's 7. There's going to be more people watching this down the road. But that's really what tonight is about. Are you awake? Are you really alive? You know, I go to Mass a lot. I talk to Catholics a lot. I mix with some of the Protestants a lot in their denominations. There's a lot of dead Christians walking around. Pope Paul VI said in the 1970s that there's a lot of baptized pagans, Christians who are, if you will, in the Matrix, living in the world. So I wanted to bring in a friend of mine, see if he's there. Are you with us?
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay, buddy?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Hello.
I wanted to bring in Mark Shishnia from Aberdeen, and I want to get your story in a second. But first, tell me about the video, that short clip that we saw. How can you relate with what she's saying?
Yes, I think it's spot on as far as where we're at in the world, and Sophia has quite a good imagination to glean that from our situation and to put it into the context of, I never knew, I never associated John Connor with JC, Jesus Christ, so that was really news to me. And there's there's a lot of that has gone around. You can go back to Disney where Jiminy Cricket, JC, if you do a little research on Jiminy Cricket, and there's a few others. Can't think of them off the top of my head, but I have seen both of those, the initial movies, and I think a couple of the follow-ups, the sequels, and really transhumanism is real, and as she said, free will is a real thing that's fading fast, and people don't understand. Like she said, they do not understand, and like the gentleman said, I'm not sure his name. Um, People are giving up their free will. They're sacrificing their free will for, I guess, an easy life or the advantage to not know.
Right. This idea that we can escape reality is nothing new to humans. I often I'll grab my phone here. How many times have you saw a young lady or a young man walking down the sidewalk looking at their phones like this? And we don't think there's transhumanism issues. I mean, there is a connectivity between our being and this object that we call a phone, which is a computer. This is a computer, right?
Yes, and it's a bio-tracking device as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's not just a computer, people. Yeah. No. I'll never forget when, yeah. The other point is Elon Musk has the ability to put a chip in our brains. Mm-hmm. That's another example of transhumanism. Yeah. So this is a very dangerous place that we find ourselves in. Now, this gal, Sophia, she probably wrote that script in the late 70s, I'm guessing, early 80s.
Yeah, that movie's been out a long time. Both of those movies, the Terminator and now how long the first Matrix came out when, I'm not sure, but
I'm guessing 99, 98, yeah, right in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we just thought it was a good action movie. And the thing that bothers me about the Matrix is not the movie. Keanu Reeves said something years ago about the movie. Because everyone was touting this as a fictitious movie, and he's like, "Well, it's more of a documentary," or he said something like that. Yeah. And I was thinking, a documentary? If it's a documentary, then there's something real about it. And this is when my part of my mind, I think, is maybe I'm still in the Matrix and coming out of it. I don't know, but I think I'm out of a lot of the Matrix because I think I am waking up to what's been going on around us. And I don't know I don't know what truth is. I don't know all the small little detail points are, but I do know that we were born with a television set. You probably were too. When you were born, did you guys have a TV?
Not right away.
Okay. That was a long time ago. You're an old man.
I'm a little older, but it wasn't too long, and our dad got a TV, and we had the 2 channels initially in black and white, and we were the first to get a color TV.
Ooh, baby.
Yeah.
So. A Zenith? Was it a Zenith?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. I think the Lockers had a Zenith. I can't remember what we had. But my point is, those people who don't think that they're in some form of matrix, well, you've been programmed as long as you've been watching the television set, because you are watching programs. It's programming. And it is a type of influence on your intellect. Now, some of the silly shows like Bugs Bunny and things like that were innocent. I mean, there's some good, wholesome shows. But but the devil doesn't show you his face ever. Why? Because what would you do if you saw Satan's face? You'd run to Christ, right?
There's so much, even back then there was so much subliminal. I don't want to get into the weeds in this podcast, but there's definite proof that Disney way back then was inserting different things into their videos, and there's a lot going on with the television of that day was just a big one of these.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so I thought we'd get into your story a little bit. Any other thoughts about Sophie Stewart and what she was talking about?
Yes, and I think what you said initially when you were talking after you came back, maybe it was before, but you talked about the heart, the mind, and the heart, and that rings, that resonates with me because there's the 4 functions of our psyche, and we've been conditioned to use reason over intuition for a long time. And really, when I listen to, is it Sophia or
Sophia Stewart?
Yes, when I listen to her, I can tell that she has a very powerful intuition. And she brings a lot from the heart as well. Her answers are for the interviewer. They're very quick and unscripted and so poignant. And that's I'm gonna definitely. I haven't had time to watch the whole video. I watched the part you said you were gonna play, but I would highly recommend to watch that.
So I think it's interesting. You're talking about the intellect, reason, and you're talking about intuition, and those are two different things.
Yes.
Right. But then there is a spirituality that often does not get mixed into any of it.
Right.
And the Holy Spirit speaking to us. That's what we call grace, right? God
That's
gives
true.
grace is gift. And so this Sophia, there's something going on with her. God is somehow speaking to her, and she's able to use a great metaphor to help us understand what's been going on. I mean, Jesus came to wake us up as well, but there's something about the world that keeps lulling us to sleep, I think. So yeah, it's very, very, very interesting. I've never seen the Terminator movies. I've seen the Matrix movies. Now I might go back. I'm not a huge fan of
Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger. I mean,
the first one is the one I appreciate the most. It's
okay.
Yeah. So watch that one. And did she not reference that to John Connor was the one who came and Sarah Connor and very well done as far as, I mean, looking at that writer and her responses and her concepts, I can see why it was so captivating.
So let's move to your story.
Sure.
Give us those the people listening a little bit about who is Mark Shishnia. Where did you grow up? Where did you come from? And
sure. Well, I grew up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and my father was fresh out of World War II, essentially, the Pacific Theater, and he saw a lot of action and a lot of bad things. And my mother was younger than him, and they both were alcoholics when I was born. They had become recovering alcoholics at that time, and then they went on to have 5 children successively, as they did in the day, and they were Catholic, and both practiced Catholic faith, and it was very stressful for my mother, and my father, probably from the war, had anger issues and things like that. And
you mean that's what was stressful?
Yes,
the fallout from war and
yep. And so it was a tumultuous, and we had our good times also, but I was in the Catholic faith until 3rd grade. And at that point, both of my parents, as young as they were, and as short of the time my father was out of the military, he had been married, and so had she once before, and both of them had not done the annulment thing. And so at that time, and I don't know if it was a misunderstanding or how that goes, because I think there's still misunderstandings today about the annulment process. And it becomes difficult for people when it's maybe not explained. I had a friend, I went through an annulment myself, and I can expound upon that. But I had a friend that went through the annulment process, just kind of jumping ahead on a tangent here, but he didn't understand it at all, and I couldn't hardly explain it to him, and he never did end up pursuing that. And so, case in point, I guess. But they were confused at what that meant, and so they left the Catholic Church when I was in 3rd grade, and we went to the First Baptist Church here in Aberdeen.
Oh wow, the enemy.
Harold Salem, and
oh sure, Pastor.
Sure.
He was on
Pastor
TV, wasn't he?
Harold E. Salem, yes.
Yeah.
A very good man, and but I was, I guess, simply put, I was pretty confused about religion by that time, and because of my parents' anger issues, and I want to also say at this time my parents were very good parents, and they stayed together through the long haul, and in the end we had a very good relationship. But those times were tough, and I as soon as I could, I was probably 15, I don't know, 14, 15. I got a job and made sure that I volunteered for Sunday morning opening up of the service station, East Side Standard in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And so that got me out of church.
There you go.
Occasionally I got
Got to
roped
pump the gas.
into a Wednesday prayer meeting every now and then. Just they were making sure I had some kind of spirituality. And it was shortly after that high school was triple the tumult that I had in high school. And as a child, high school was triple that tumult. And so with a lot of issues, and as you mentioned earlier, a lot of alcohol and drugs, getting in trouble. And I told you this earlier when we were speaking. I was very enamored with the military life from the stories my dad did tell. And so I joined the Navy at 17 years old, and had a great tour. And it was not without its own tumult, and but went through the Navy and came back home. And I don't know, I can jump ahead to I lived a very decadent life after that. I went through many different phases and trying times, and by my own creation, mostly not having an understanding at all of who I was. I was really what I call a pseudo extrovert. Because I find out later here in life, I'm into studying personalities now, that I'm quite the introvert. I'm a kind of intuitive empath, and I worked against that grain all my life, and finally, it all came to a head with a divorce and custody battle. And that was approximately 16 years ago, about the time I met you, Glenn. And that's when I came back to the Catholic Church. And it really was, at that time, a life-saving event for me. I had a profound conversion, and it was nearly, I don't want to exaggerate for your audience, but it was a very mystical experience, and very visual, and it involved a lot of negative energy being balanced at that time. And I had, it was, it's God has a way of working from things that have happened years and years ago. As we know, he lines things up in his sights for him to eventually, I don't know if this is theologically correct, but to pull the trigger and get us in right where it counts. And that happened to me. One of the things that I had heard prior to this profound day was that Catholic Church had Mass every morning. And there was quite an oddity in my thought pattern in that moment of enlightenment, where it was just clear to me I needed to go to church every day. And I can back up, because when we left the Catholic Church in third grade, it was right about the time where I was to have my, I'm not sure if the age and the years line up, but
confirmation
was in that area there for me. And So as I said, I was very confused when we left, and suddenly now I'm in a church that, essentially preaches the opposite of what the Eucharist means. And, whereas in the Catholic faith, the Eucharist is very important and it is the body and blood of Christ. Now in the Baptist faith, we just do this in memory, just like it's, this is just in memory, and it's this, and literally to say, I don't want to get the Baptist crowd up in arms here if I'm incorrect, but that the body and blood is not in that host, and that it's just a symbol.
Right.
And so that was very confusing to me. And at the point of my conversion in, was that 1996? Anyway, at that point, I went back to the Catholic Church and I threw it all in. So it was very exciting. There had been a great balance of my psychological functions along with my soul, my spirit. We mentioned, thinking, and we mentioned intuition, the heart, and then there's also the two opposites of feeling, emotions, and the other side of sensing, our senses, smell, touch,
Right.
Sight, and those make a cross, if you think about it. And in the center of that cross is our soul. And so my functions were very imbalanced, and my soul was, you remember the game you used to get you put the dime or quarter in and you'd get the game and you had to balance the little BB into the center?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what we're doing in life. We're trying to individuate. We're trying to differentiate all those areas of our psyche and our soul as well, to balance that into the center. And I think at that time I was in the crosshairs. JC, Jesus Christ, he pulled the trigger, and there was a great change in my life at that time. I think things had been so imbalanced that it was very easy for me to see the debauchery that I brought myself to. And at that point, when I went all in, good things began to happen to me. A lot of good things.
Yeah, that's really great. The mysticism part. As soon as you said that, I went, "Huh? What can you share?" First of all, what do you mean by mysticism? And then, can you share what happened?
Yeah, I can. I can give you a little background. It was a very. I had brought on such negative energy into the marriage that I was in with my wife Susie, and my 4 children. I had caused such tumult in their lives as well, and it just got, it got to a point where she couldn't take it anymore, and I didn't know how to rectify the mess I'd made, and so when she left with the children on that winter's day, I was suicidal, and very close. I always say I was within 5 minutes of
Wow.
killing myself, and people that know me know if I set out to do something, I don't fail. And so I had set my mind to that, and I recall now you're bringing back some definite shadow things. I got down on my knees at that time, and I just started praying the Lord's Prayer, and I got to the end of the prayer, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And it kind of switched automatically, and I don't know where that happened, but I even in that moment, I felt a bit selfish, possibly, because I had become what you might say a full-blown narcissist. And in that moment, I thought, there I am being selfish again. And I changed the words to deliver me from evil.
Mm.
And it started out as the last line, and next thing you know, I'm chanting it. And I was just chanting. And it didn't take very long. And I was on my knees in basically a darkened shop, my auto mechanic shop. And I was almost at the top of my lungs saying, deliver me from evil. And I haven't shared this to too many people because it sounds a little lambastic, but I saw smoke come from the ceiling, and I could hear nothing. It was like a big bomb went off. I had no audio input, and I was just, all the shell shock of a lifetime left me, and I was a different man from that instant on.
Wow, that's incredible. Was the smoke leaving the building or was it coming in?
It seemed like it was rolling out of the ceiling. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but it was a very profound experience for me.
So what happened
And
next?
my life was changed. When later on, after 2 or 3 years, you all know, a lot of people might know Father Ed Pierce.
Sure.
And yep. And so he was one of the first people I met. I started out at St. Mary's here in town, and daily morning mass, and through a chain of events, my life is very synchronic. There's many synchronizations of events that I expect now. I'm not as surprised, and I use my free will to make my journey, and I know that there will be something from that power of Jesus Christ that will come to me, that from an event that happened years ago or weeks ago, and so I those things happened, and I ended up traveling to Sacred Heart, and that was a story in itself. That can be shared at another time, but I ended up over there in the choir because of another gentleman that took an interest in me, but at that time, and where I was going with this, I met Father Ed Pearson, and I have joked because I got a lot of free counseling from the Catholic Church. I would go, yeah, I'd go into confession, especially the priests that I met initially. I know that they have become more busy, but at that time, I could spend, literally whatever was needed to, for questions and answers. And at that time, Father Ed told me, as some might know, that he was a very avid in exorcism in the Catholic faith.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he said that I essentially performed my own exorcism at that time.
Right.
And that's why it was such a mysterious and mystical event. And that was a lot of energy. And it just has been a cascade of good fortune since.
See, I wonder if that would have happened if you weren't baptized, because you were baptized at that point, right?
I was baptized as a baby. Yep.
Right. Yeah, and there's a lot of people a lot of non-Catholics, Christians that won't baptize their kids. And I don't think they understand that when you don't baptize your baby or your young children, they're not Christians. They're just technically called pagans. That just means they're not baptized. It doesn't mean they're evil, but they don't have the power and friendship of God. And we Christians, we have that. And you exercise that. It sounds to me, right? You exercise that power that you had. It came from somewhere, and it came from the Our Father prayer. And you really, the Lord, through your prayer and your will, kicked Satan out of the room.
It was a profound change. I could go on and on how different I was immediately, and people were skeptical. So
Oh, I'm
they
sure.
were they were used to a different person, and really, and not really so much a different person, but more so myself to
Mm.
balance that energy of those functions in me, and put my soul and the spirit of Christ, the Creator, uh, more in vogue into the center of that formula. That's the best way I can explain it.
So you had really a spiritual experience.
It was,
And
yes.
that was the trigger. You used the word trigger. That was the trigger that set you in motion to not only spirituality, but then you learned the deposit of faith, right? The teachings of the Catholic Church.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Well, as I said, I went in with both feet. So I had one of the first people I met was the choir director, or as they call them, the liturgist at Sacred Heart. As I traveled from, and I met the Light of the World group, and that's how I ended up at Sacred Heart. And I can tell that story quickly. My ex-wife Susie was Catholic, and she um, uh, had gone to Light of the World prior to I did, and I was supposed to go with her, and as per the person I was at that time, I bailed on that, and so she was at that time. Then, as I went into the faith and I went to St. Mary's, I went to the Light of the World, and as you know, you go into small groups, and was the plan I had. I was a pseudo extrovert, so I jump in with both feet, and I was doing my thing, and and they said that the only group that was available. I may have I'm a little in the weeds here as far as the exact accuracy, but for some reason, her association with Light of the World and mine was going to be a conflict in St. Mary's. And the prior Mark would have said, no, I'm staying, and she's got to go. And I said, okay, well, what can we do? And they said, well, you could go to a small group over to Sacred Heart. And so I met Barb Forrid there, and got into a small group at Sacred Heart. But going over to Sacred Heart was a very profound move as well. I always look at free will as we're on a big ocean in a sailboat, and we can steer around in that, but Christ has this big wind that's blowing where he would like us to be. And so that energy took me Sacred Heart, where I would meet Charlene Blondo, and the choir director and liturgist, and she took a great interest in me. She was looking for people to participate in the choir, and I never was much of a singer. I had an interest in music, and always kind of a little bit of an urge to try it. And with some help, as I mentioned, from a gentleman, he got me into the choir. And the first time that I was in the choir, it wasn't to sing, it was to do a couple of readings. And I had several people approach me and say, you should become a lector. And so that's what happened there. I went from, and then I also stayed in the choir. So it didn't take long, and I can just kind of cut to the chase here on the list. I was, in adoration. What are that? Perpetual adoration.
Mm-hmm.
I was a Eucharistic minister. I was actually a Eucharistic minister at both parishes for a while.
Oh, no kidding.
For a short period of time. And then I was a lector, and I have even lectured at St. Mary's as well during the first Mass of a priest that had been ordained. A priest I had just met, he had asked me to lecture. And then in the choir, and then the president of the Sarah Club. And that was kind of the apogee of my career there. And we had a very successful Sarah Club in Sacred Heart while I was president, and I'm proud of that. And it went really well for me. So it was progression, and as your question,
the doctrines.
Yes.
When did you embrace? did you embrace all the doctrines of the Catholic faith? Because you were in the Baptist Church for a while. You came
Yes,
back into the Catholic faith.
Yeah,
Tell
that's
me
a
about
good
that.
question. Yeah, there was a couple of things that I questioned, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to go into detail on those things. It's very controversial. But at the time, I asked a priestly friend of mine. I said, what about this? I said, I don't necessarily buy it, and
Which
you
one?
know,
You can.
uh,
It's okay.
well, I had I had initially trouble with the Ascension of Mary.
Hmm.
And then I also had trouble. I think I have mentioned this to you before, maybe a long time ago, the Ascension of Mary. And I also had trouble with, this is my trouble now, not anyone else's. And I had uh, trouble with, now I forget. That was the main one. And certain dates and holidays seem to not um, resonate with me. As I say, I'm very intuitive, and when things didn't add up, it's hard for me to get over them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at the time, I had asked a priestly friend, which I gained a lot of them, priestly friends, and still to this day. Uh, but I said, well, what's the deal with that? And at that time, and that's why I won't mention his name. He said he had a little trouble with it too, and he said, but it's a team you're on, and it's a team game, and if you want to be a team player, you're just going to have to. And I did, I did. I would just, there would be something that I would, you know, um, for lack of a better word, overlook. And so I went on with the faith, and really with no problems in that at all. And I am a mystical person. I believe in the true presence, and I believe in many of the other doctrines of the Catholic faith as well. And so that was just one thing of a couple, two or three, and that was not the bigger factor for me when it comes to the Catholic Church.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's go back 4 years in time. Well, actually, you're going to move ahead now. We're going to move to 2020.
Okay.
In light of the video clip that we watched,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing what you know now, is how accurate do you think she is?
Very.
Tell me about that.
Well, we've seen it unfold. And if you are a person on this earth with a pulse and you're not seeing it unfold, you are doing just what the gentleman said. You are ignoring it. And history repeats itself. And I just had this conversation with a close friend recently where people think that because we are a civilized society, that these things cannot happen again that happened in 1917 and the World War II and Hitler and those kind of things, mass genocide. In fact, in a lot of ways, those things have never gone away. They've only been hidden in this matrix that has been created. And the matrix is brilliant. And the matrix didn't start with television. The matrix started thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
The matrix started, and this is where I'll try to stay out of the weeds, but and this goes to the highest levels of the Vatican, and different books that have been left out of the Bible, and certain ones that have been put in, and the the situation that it has created, and that's just 2,000 years ago. This is my own belief, my own opinion, but I think the Matrix was started 3 or 4,000 years ago, and there is a force, and you've mentioned it many times. You speak of evil and you speak of Satan. There is a. It is my belief that the force of good and evil is balanced throughout the earth, but it's a push and pull, and it goes with the aeon, and it's an 800-year period, and as I said, I'll try to stay out of the weeds here, but we are in a time now where the technology, and you speak of transhumanism, and the technology that we're using right now to do this podcast has literally taken over society. And it's more than just your phone and you talking about buying a boat, and you get home and suddenly now there's a boat shows up on your Google or in your
Right.
Amazon page. You talking about buying an electric beater for the kitchen or a new set of golf clubs, and suddenly that shows up. That's just the very surface. It's the very top viscosity of a very deep ocean of nefarious control. And this is all to our banking and financial system, the central banks, and I don't want to get myself lost here, but we are in a time where I have to work to have compassion for the people that are fooled by this entirely, that go about their day and step into their cubicles and think that this can just continue to go on. There will be a time where they will all see, that there's going to be this change, and I think we're near that point. I guess my question to you would be, what do you think? Do you think that this can be a de-evolution where there's a parallel good energy and a good society and culture that is being created next to what's been created, what we're living now, and that is slowly the people will initiate themselves into that, or will it be something that's more profound and drastic, like as in my conversion, where it's a night and day thing, where they'll wake up one day and realize that.
I think it was Pope John the 23rd prayed for a new Pentecost.
Mm-hmm.
I think God's going to fulfill that. But
so.
Before we get into the new Pentecost or second Pentecost, or again, I don't think there's a new Pentecost. There's only one, but I think God is going to somehow, to use your word, trigger it again, however that works. There's been a lot of pain and suffering that led up to that. The 20th century has seen more martyrdom than all the other centuries put together. Just the 20th century.
Yes.
When you think about what the Russians did to all the Christians, Hitler. You think about, I think it was Nagasaki, when the bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. 90% were Catholics.
Yes.
Nobody talks about that, right? I think Hiroshima was, a friend of mine was saying Hiroshima was between 40 and 70% Catholics, Christians. So there has been an all-out attack on the church, Christ's church. And through that suffering and martyrdom is going to breed a new wave of Pentecost upon the earth. I think we're close to it as well. I think I'll see it. I'm hoping I'll see it in my lifetime. Because
Well, when you say close to it, I used to be of the thought process that these things were going to happen, you know, quickly.
yeah,
Let's just say quicker. It's not going to happen. Although we're on fast forward right now, this thing will take years to play out, I believe.
well, you
It's
think
taken
about
thousands of years to get here.
yeah. I mean, you think about Noah.
Mm-hmm.
It took him at least 75 years to build the ark. So when Noah first started talking to the people that God is going to do something unless you change, that was 100 years before it rained.
Yeah.
So I think, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in the opinion that this is going to happen any time now, it could. I mean, I'm not saying it won't, but the probability is it's years down the road. But I don't know. I think the world is beginning to wake up to the realization that God has been showing us how things have been run
Mm-hmm.
and who's been running them. And if you pull all the layers back, you can't help but say it's the Satanic Church.
And
Now,
do you think that the world is waking up, or
yes,
I
slowly.
mean,
Yes.
I feel that I have a perception that they're not yet. I think that, and I think it's going to take a long time to rectify a lot of these situations. All of our institutions, from the top, very, very pinnacle of leadership, down to the janitor in the halls, there's corruption, and it's going to be painful, and there's going to be I think something, my guess would be with the financial system or something, but there will be quite an awakening, as you might compare it to a second type of Pentecost, where there will be something so drastic that they can't take their eyes off it.
Yeah. I think we're still years away.
Possibly.
But I think it could be in my lifetime. I've got probably 40 years left.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot has happened in 40 years.
Yeah, that's right. And
a lot. We're on fast forward now, and things seem to be speeding up. I do think the world is beginning to catch on. I really do. And I'm not here. I don't know that you are either here claiming to know what's going on in the world, like what's really happening. I don't know, but I do know something's happening.
A lot of conversation with people are talking. As far as doing anything, I mean, we have to look at what happened just several years ago, with COVID, and how the entire world essentially went into lockstep. People forget that the doors of their church were closed. People forgot that there was a dispensation for communion. The last homily that I heard before the doors closed was it 2020? Whatever, is it April? That's so long ago now.
Yeah, it would have been probably March, April of 2020.
The last homily I heard was that this was not metaphorical. It was that I would die without the Eucharist.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last homily I heard. And I said to my wife, Sherry, I said, by the weekend, the doors of the church will be closed. And she just could not believe it. She said, no way is that going to happen. Then this was on Sunday that I heard the homily. On Monday, it was Monday or Tuesday, the doors to the church were closed. The church was closed for business. And people forget that. And they don't understand, by giving up their free will on a daily basis, that those edicts, those processes are still in place. the powers that be, the satanic powers, as you call them, those powers are still in place. Those have not rescinded their control of that. As soon as they would like, they can have the mandatory masks, they can have the churches closed again. People will differ with me on this, but it's all in place. Nothing has changed, and the people's perception and their tenacity has not changed either.
Yeah, I think I would probably push back. I think I don't see that happening. I think when you look around this country, and just like the mama bears that have kids in public school systems.
I'm saying that they're still in place. I'm not saying they're going to use them. They'll use something else.
They might be in place. I don't know.
If, let's just say you have $250,000 or $300,000 in your IRA, and then suddenly the world financial system crashes. That's not that far-fetched. I'm not getting into the weeds there at all. There's countries like China and Iran and India buying gold up like crazy, and they've created a BRICS money system where they're working day and night to take over the petrodollar. Now, some might think I'm getting into the weeds there as well. I may use that phrase a couple of times here this evening, but let's just say you have $300,000 in your IRA. That might be an average for whatever America, I'm not sure. And then suddenly you wake up one day and now there's $50,000 in there. Or it's $100,000 even. What do you think that'll do to people? Now that might fill the churches up, but there's going to be a lot of things going on along with that. And that's just one angle. I'm not saying that that's going to be it either, but there is the possibility of something catastrophic happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that, and I'll use that word. What it really means is discerning.
Perceive it.
Yeah, a lot of people think that it's probably going to happen as well. I'm one of them. I'm concerned about where we've been financially, and it's very troublesome. But yeah, what do you say to those Catholics and Christians who have left the church and haven't come back to Mass yet? I mean,
like myself.
Yeah, where are you at with all that?
Well, at that point, I was very confused, I'll be honest.
Sure.
The confusion was more so, I'm a little bit of a militant, and I looked at myself and I have emails I can share. I could revisited to different priests that was well prior to COVID, where I considered myself, part of a militant church that was to defeat Satan and defeat the oppression of the creators of the Matrix. And I have known of the Matrix for quite a while. It's a real thing. It's not just fantasy. There's so many archetypes included in these stories that they're ancient. Yeah. And when the church, and I'll say it like this, and maybe it's arguable for some, but when the church rolled over to the state when COVID hit, let's just say when COVID hit, when the cruise ship showed up off the coast of Portland and had all the different cases of COVID on it. At that point, I thought, oh my gosh, how can they not see that this is another distraction that this World Economic Forum is creating, the higher ups and the tallest of the money chain, BlackRock. How can they not see this? Or actually, I said, they're going to see this. They're going to know what's going on. This is too obvious. Within, I don't know, I don't know the timelines, and I don't want to get too wrong on those things. But it wasn't long, and the doors to the church were closed. And that wasn't the only thing. I mean, I was like, okay, well, um, it took me a while to parse out. And when I could start to see money arriving into systems, not just the church, but others, here's your COVID money. You keep your doors closed. You follow these guidelines. You do this, you do that, and you can get this COVID. So when I started, I'm an idealist, and I was all in, and I was ready to fight. I said, let's open them up. Let's do communion. You know, let's do what we have to do.
Yeah.
That did not happen, and not only did that not happen, but then I saw that the church wasn't full of a bunch of militants as myself. The church was full of people who feared death. And that was unreconcilable to me. It was not anything that I had imagined would happen. It was a surprise. And then the lies and the censorship, and it just was so much damning information and occurrences from my point of view, my personal opinion, that, as I said, it was unreconcilable. I could not parse that as something. It was not what I thought it was.
Yeah, that wasn't a surprise to me. I've been working in the church for, really since 1990, so a big chunk of my lifetime, really. And traveling around the country, different parishes, meeting different priests, some really great priests, many of them not so great. And most of the people that I met on Net Ministries were really good people. But overall, the church is dead spiritually. And a really great, for those of you who are listening, a really great podcast is Taylor Marshall interviewed, I think his name is Father Charles Burr. I'll try to find that. And he talks about Pope Paul VI made a cardinal, a bishop, a cardinal. I think he was from France. I can't think of his last name, but what he didn't know was he was an actual Mason. And so that cardinal was sort of in charge. No, he was in charge of making bishops throughout all of the world. And Masons were put everywhere in the world. And by 1980, the Catholic Church was full of Mason bishops. And that's how you infiltrate and kill the church. You see, Bishop Fulton Sheen was told by a priest or a bishop that was a Mason and said, the way we're going to kill the Catholic Church is through obedience. They will have to listen to us.
Yes.
And isn't that interesting?
When it comes to the priest's doorstep, this obedience thing, I heard it put well, and I think I saw that very episode, and another very good one from Taylor Marshall was right around the time of the World Health Forum's invitation to the Vatican, and so a very interesting episode of Taylor Marshall. He has a book called Infiltration, as you probably know.
Right, and everyone should read that book. It's very, very interesting.
Correct. That's correct. I think in an odd way, Taylor Marshall, he definitely is on the right track. But in a way, to me, he's a little bit of a resounding gong, because the people that listen to him, they want to get fired up. But I hear them say the church is going to be changed from the inside, but that's going to be difficult. I think that's going to come to a different light as well. But Taylor Marshall has put out some very good content on the vaccine and COVID and the Vatican as well. I mean, the current state of the Vatican. What do you say?
The current state of the Vatican?
Yes.
I don't know. I try to stay away from the Vatican. I was really, I was a little surprised. I was probably more shocked than anything when the Vatican shut down in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
When the church shut down, I was a little surprised. At first, I thought, well, if this is truly a pandemic, I understand. But we're talking about a virus here, and Jesus is not scared of a virus.
No.
And
No.
but why are we scared of a virus? So
Well, look at the missionaries of the faith, the evangelists, and your Mother Teresa's. Were they afraid to embrace the diseases of the world? Were they? Did
no.
the ones who went to the leper colonies? Did they?
Yeah.
They shy away? Did they say we're not going to have the Holy Eucharist today because there's just too many cases of leprosy abound? That, and when you say, how did you put it about the Vatican? I know there's such good people. I've met so many good people, and they have benefited me in my life, and enriched my life in so many ways. So that's not what I'm saying, but what one must look at it is there the possibility that the poisonous head of the snake also poisons the tail? Does it come down? And I have another question for you. So have you been abreast of the synod of synodality?
Yeah, I paid attention a little bit to the synod of synodality, and there's certainly concerns there. I would say pretty big concerns there.
Yeah.
But I always go back to this, and I think I'd like you and those who have stopped going to the church. Name a time where there wasn't scandal.
Well, that's the point as well. I mean, one must think that time, and I've heard this rebuttal before, one must think that is because this is part of the matrix that they've been working on for years, thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look, there may even be more scandal than non-scandal. And so, this current situation, and I'll just a little bit of a side note. What is their trepidation with the Latin Mass? I mean, there's just always some divisive thing that they capitalize on.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I think it's really bizarre. That Latin Mass is very old, and it's part of who we are as the church, Christ Church, and I think that's another bizarre thing. But again, this too shall pass.
Are you sure?
Yeah, why wouldn't it? I mean, in the 9th century, it was pretty bad.
It will pass, possibly, but as history goes in cycles, this passing is not something where one can simply discount our current situation and say, this is going to pass. You have to, possibly consider the smaller in the trench things of a pope that would tell all of his flock to receive a vaccination that is controversial at the very least. I mean, that I'm not speaking way out into the weeds here either. There's 42%.
No, he was. You're right. He was in support of it. He was.
Yes, and there's 42% of the population that haven't had it. They don't want it.
Yeah.
And to say that you're not being a good steward and you're not being compassionate to your neighbor if you don't take this with all, and this is just my own research, you do your own, but I found a lot of trails that led to abortion.
Sure.
With that vaccine.
Yeah, that's possible.
Oh my!
But again,
overlook those things, Glenn.
No, it's. I think you're missing the bigger point.
Okay.
I think the bigger point is this: you're always going to have scandal in the church because the church is made up of us humans,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter who's running the Vatican, that doesn't. How do I want to say this? They don't determine my faith life. My faith life is based in the person of Christ.
Mine either.
Because there's a Vatican, let's just say allegedly, okay? Because I'm not going to sit here and say that the Vatican is evil, but let's just say allegedly they are. Well, we've seen that before in our church history. We've seen bad popes. We've seen bad hierarchy. And the church just keeps going. So that shouldn't dictate my faith. It should actually give you more faith, because how in the world can Christ's church keep going with such bad leadership? But we still keep going.
What you're saying. I can agree with that. And what I'd like to add to that is that the situation that the church is in right now. I mean, it's always kind of glossed over. What's the new technique or the new direction that the current bishop in our diocese is taking? It's got a name now, where we're moving priests and that kind of thing again. I can't think of I've heard it, but I can't think of it. But Bishop de Groot has a new direction that he's taking to keep these parishes going as best he can. And the proof is in the pudding of parishes still continually closing and still a shortage of priests. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
So what happens is you have a metaphysical connection of those atrocities that are occurring in the Vatican. This is deep. This is not just the Latin Mass, and it's not just take the vaccine. It goes back to the Essenes, and it goes back to the St. Gallen group. Have you ever heard of the St. Gallen group? They have helped decide popes throughout history. That's could be some type of conspiracy theory, I suppose, but they're a real entity. These things are deep, and it's a metaphysical thing that those energies sift downward. And that doesn't mean that your parish priest or your diocesan bishop is a bad man. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that there's, as I said, I believe that the energy is till Jesus Christ returns on earth. It's a balance of push and pull over the aeons. But right now, in the Catholic faith and in government and in business, the military-industrial complex, across the board, there is debauchery. There is problems. This has been brewing for some time, and the metaphysics of the issues in the Vatican are coming down to roost in each person in the pew. You see?
There will be a response. If that is true, which I can understand why you think that would be true, I would say a couple things. One, this isn't the first time. Go back to the Council of Nicaea. How many bishops were Arians? The high majority. Now think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, what is an Arian bishop?
But don't overlook what happened at that point. What happened? Tell me. What happened to the church? What happened to the people? What happened to the popes?
Of course. Yes. But this is the part of the whole nature of Christianity. So what I'm saying is this has happened before.
Yes.
And the lay people, and it's happening, it might be happening now, but the lay people and I think it's going to be the lay people, we will push back. I mean, look at the younger generation. Look at
You
the younger
say-
generation. Huh?
But yeah, you say we.
Right.
I didn't see that with COVID. I didn't see the pushback. I mean, I thought that was a bit of a nice dry run. I didn't see that. And you say that that won't happen again, but what else, as Sophia Stewart said, what else
I don't.
will.
Yeah, I don't think they're. I don't think the churches are going to close down again. I don't think
No,
that's
I'm
happening.
not saying that. And I said at the time that might not be the approach they take. That's not what I want to get locked into.
Oh, okay.
I just want to say there will be something else. I mentioned.
Oh, something's coming. Yeah, I agree with you.
And they won't do anything. That's my belief. My belief alone.
Yeah. Something else is coming. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you can, again, I think, ladies and gentlemen, you can feel it coming. I mean, the world keeps getting more intense. And this is the spiritual battle that we're in. You know, are we really in the book of Revelation? Some people think we are. I have no idea. I don't want to stick my neck out and say, yeah, we're in the book of Revelations. I have no idea. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, oh, something's really wrong here, because something is really, really wrong here.
That is true.
I mean, the Catholic Church closed her doors. You can't, that's not in the weeds. That happened. And I'm a little surprised that happened, but if you look at our 2,000-year history, there's a lot of brightness and there's a lot of darkness in it, and this too shall pass. That's what I'm trying to tell you. This will pass. Will it get uglier in the next 10 years? It might. In the next 20 years? Yeah, it actually might. In the next 50 years? It actually might. But Christ, he will win, because the soul of the church is the Holy Spirit. So in the end,
there are those, and as you speak to people like myself in your podcast and your audience and possibly beyond that have left the church, there's probably, I've thought of this, there's different categories. You know, there's the ones that just quit going and they don't practice any type of spirituality, or there's ones that went to other churches, you know, that maybe stayed a little stronger during the COVID crisis. There is probably a certain cross-section of ones like myself who have gotten a greater spirituality by leaving the church, that have ascended and have really a far deeper and more intense relationship with Jesus Christ. You know, so it was very profound for me, because my life is very synchronic. So to hear the homily, and I know if that person ever sees this podcast, he'll know who he is, but the priest would tell me, you'll die without the Eucharist. You'll die. And even to say, this is not metaphoric, you'll die. And the doors would close the next day.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that we live in weird times again in the church. Very strange.
And that's the hurdle that the church has to bring people back. You know, not just myself in reaching a higher spirituality, but the ones that are just sitting at home on Sunday watching the football game, and the ones that are at a different church, or, you know, the ones that, have maybe even possibly left Christianity, you know. So that's the challenge the church has. And I don't know where you go from there. I mean, that's my question back to you. You know, you want to draw those people in, you want to draw myself in. How is that to be? I need proof now. You know, my faith is intact. I might be an oddity amongst those cross sections, but they will need proof too.
Yeah. We're in a very difficult spot. There's terrible ramifications for closing your doors.
In the end, it's a good thing. It's a cycle that, as you say, we've gone through before, but people should realize that this is a cycle, and this is not such a civilized world that these things can't happen.
Right.
I mean, that should
Right. I think that's the bigger point. You know, you brought that up. 1917, the Bolsheviks, the
Sure.
I mean, I was listening to. We got just a couple of minutes here. I was just listening to a podcast the other day where the priest was saying, the communists have, in a way, the communists have taken over. They shut down the world in 2020.
It's a
And
great
that's,
vehicle. It's a
yeah,
great vehicle for Satan.
yeah, oh yeah. So, we're there now. How is God going to respond to this? I think God might be waiting on us. Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you?" And I don't think the church has answered that question.
No.
Yeah, and I think the church has to ask the Lord, what do we want? And it might be bishop by bishop. I don't know, but
It will be. It will be a certain
yeah,
amount of in the trenches from the inside. But there has to be also that where those people that stand at the pulpit will bring that awareness, that consciousness to the flock, to the people. And I haven't seen that. And um, have you ever heard of Father Altman?
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
he was highly censored, and then he was kicked out of the church, right? And you've heard of Archbishop Vigano as well, have you not?
I have.
Yes. And so those men are prophets ahead of their time, and they ring the bell of truth, but they've been chastised. They've been excommunicated. They've been kicked out of the church, along with many others that tried to stick their head above the radar. What I would like to see, and I told people this early on before I really got before I really had figured out for myself and become this even more spiritual being, that I said this to someone. This was like within the first year of leaving the Catholic Church, where I could have went back. If Father Altman came to Aberdeen and got up on the pulpit, I would go to Mass. I would go to confession, and I would receive the Eucharist. But I have not heard a sermon like that. And I've been to church. That's the type of thing that the Catholic Church needs. It needs the people to hear the truth, no matter how hard it may seem to put out. But they're held back, and that's where I have compassion for them, for the priest of the pulpit. They've been held back. They've been told what they can say and what they cannot say. There may be some that come out and say, "Oh, I disagree with that. I can say whatever I want." Well, then say it. And tell me you're going to say it. Tell me to be there on that Sunday. And show me you'll say it. I even had a conversation with one, a newer priest, and I said, "This is what you need to do." By the time I heard him give that homily, it was so watered down that it was unrecognizable from the discussion we had. So that you can't have that and make the changes. You're making changes. You make this podcast and you have people come on and speak the truth. Is that not true? And that's what makes the changes. But, until that's done in the context of the church, not much will change.
But what about you, Mark?
In what way?
You're a change agent.
Excuse me?
I think you're a change agent.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And, just a little gentle push for you. Why not come back and make change? Ask those questions.
That's crossed my mind.
Yeah. I mean,
it's, and I don't say this let me just put it, I have to think about that, how to respond properly. I tried to be that change agent through COVID. And if the only way that a change agent, one of that is a manifester and a generator, as myself, will be encouraged to immerse himself into that situation is if he sees the change, if he sees the people that are willing to take the chance, if he sees the priest that is willing to stick his head above the radar. I spoke with priests during that time. Now, I still have that memory. There will be another chance, possibly, for myself to return. I cannot deny that. That could be in the stars, as you might say, in that crosshairs that Jesus Christ would line up. That could be a possibility, but it might come to the next, event. Let's just say that. And because in the event that happened, they wouldn't listen. I always thought of my gift as there's the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can name them, can you not?
If you give me enough time, I'll come up with them. But put me on the spot. I can't find. Put me on the spot. I can't remember one of them.
That's why I put that on.
That's how it goes, right?
But I know that they're all pretty generally accepted, except the gift of prophecy. And as you know in the verse, it says a prophet is not accepted in his own town. I'm paraphrasing it.
You got to get out of Aberdeen, man.
Well, it's not so much. That's more of a metaphorical phrase to say no one accepts that. They won't see until it is raining down. And out of compassion, I could see myself doing that again. But it has to be right. And it's not going to be on the day-to-day that we're in now. It'll be when, as the second Pentecost comes, as you say.
Well, I would encourage you and the so many Mass Catholics who have just left to try to find your way back in, because the Eucharist is still present, still available. Confession is still available. And as we know, as Catholics, right, an experience with the sacrament is an experience with the person of Jesus Christ. And so you and all those Catholics who started watching Mass on TV and are kind of fed up,
there's those
and fed up with their pastor and thought, well, I'll watch the guy in Chicago, or I'll watch this priest over in Florida because it's been convenient.
And if I may address those people like myself, and this might be a good opportunity for me, you can still have a relationship with Jesus Christ. You can still have a relationship with our Creator, God in heaven. You can still do that. And whatever it is that you do to increase your spirituality, to increase your closeness to God, do that. And until, as Glenn says, you would come back and receive the Eucharist again. But in the meantime, know there are people like you out there, just like me.
That's a great way to wrap up the show. It really is. I think what we know for sure is that there is some type of matrix.
It is.
And many people are, actually, I think a lot of people are starting to climb out of it slowly. I really do. I've had people that are asking me questions today that 4 years ago they would have never addressed. And that's what this podcast is about, being open to the possibility that there is an actual matrix and somehow you're caught up in it. And how do you get out? Ask questions. Just start asking questions.
Research. Don't research the normal stuff. Go somewhere else. Dig deeper. Type in exactly what is against what you want to know.
Yeah.
Find what's deep, dark in the shadow. Vatican and debauchery. Or just type it in and research. Go deep. And I'm not beating up the Vatican, because it can be the industrial military complex. It can be
it's everywhere.
Everywhere. Research and dig and find out and be open. Use your free will.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, especially Catholics, don't be surprised that there are problems in the Vatican because that's the very place Satan wants to take over. If he can take over the Vatican, he can shut the church down. And you know what? It could seem like it's getting close, but it's not going to happen in the end because it is Christ's bride and he will conquer. Well, God bless you, Mark. Thanks for taking the time to be with me tonight. We went a little longer than I thought. That's a pretty good conversation.
Yes,
and
thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, you are loved and you got strength in the bars of your gates. God bless you. Thanks, Mark.
Peace be with you.
Bye-bye.